Speaker Silver, thank you very much for making time for us. I appreciate it.
I'm delighted to be with you and your viewers.
Thank you. We haven't seen you for a while, so we have a lot of catching up to do. I'd like to start actually with the millionaire's tax because it's in the news now. It has been a big issue for you, and the Occupy Wall Streeters are now making it an issue, the tax the rich issue. The Obama administration is pushing for the so-called Buffett rule. Do you believe that you have a better shot at getting it in 2012?
Yeah, let's understand the distinction, though. We are talking about a tax reduction for people making more than $1 million that will go into effect unless we stop the tax reduction. This is not about increasing taxes on the wealthy. This is about preventing a reduction in taxes on the wealthy.
Well, the increase went into effect when the PIT increase was passed, which is almost 3 years ago now.
Correct.
Correct, okay. So you want to keep it at that level, not go any higher?
Yes, we want to keep it at that level for people who make more than $1 million gross income. So that three years ago, the surcharge went into effect for people making more than $250,000. We say give the relief to the people making $250,000. Just don't give the tax cut to people making over $1 million.
Okay, so has the situation changed because the governor in 2010 during the campaign promised he would close the $10 billion budget deficit with no new taxes. He saw the millionaire's tax, the continuation of it, as a new tax, even though the way that you put it out there it would not be. Do you believe now that the situation has changed, that he would be more open to it in 2012?
I can't tell you what the governor will be open to or won't be open to. I just think that the facts and circumstances are going to make it more obvious it's something we ought to be doing. As local governments and state government has to lay off workers, we can look to that as the alternative. As we cut education aid, as we did last year, we can look to enhance education aid around the state and give property tax relief by doing such to localities if we have more money to distribute in education aid. That money can be used for that, and it can be used to balance the state budget as well.
You bring up the issue of property tax relief. Last year, I shouldn't say last year, we're still in this year. Last session, you had your House pass the 2% property tax cap that the governor was championing. Now we're seeing local governments around the state, some of them, actually move to override that. Perhaps they're under stress because of the failure to provide mandate relief or storm recovery costs that they weren't expecting. Was it a mistake to pass that cap, do you believe?
No, I don't think it's a mistake. We gave them always the out. When they make the case to their voters, to their taxpayers, they're going to be able to do more than that. All we really ask is that they alert their constituents that there is a cap. We have to exceed the cap, whether it's storm relief, whether it's education aid. They are entitled to have that out. We didn't do a hard cap which said no relief.
But there was also not what the counties and the school districts were seeking in terms of mandate relief. Is that going to be a renewed focus for the legislature going forward?
There will always be a focus on mandate relief for localities. It is a complex system of mandates that have evolved over hundreds of years in this state. And the governor, to his credit, with members of the legislature, go through it piece by piece and see what's really necessary, how many audits you have to do by independent auditors of the same school system, just as an example, how often you have to do it when the controller of the state of New York does it as well, just an example.
But the really thorny issues like, say, the Taylor Law or the Triborough Amendment, we haven't seen those things change, which is what some people would argue, on the conservative side of things, would argue that is necessary to provide real mandate reform, or even maybe a significant pension reform.
Well, let's just say two things. One, we did, on a statewide basis, we did pension reform last year, made significant savings that were estimated to be in the tens of billions of dollars over the next 30 years. And we'll see that relief. Obviously, it comes in as new employees get on the payroll. their pension benefits will be less. Constitutionally, you can't affect existing employees,
right.
and that goes across the state and the localities. A lot of the union benefits that are coming in now are coming in with the realization that local governments can't afford as much as they have been able to in the past, and unions are being asked to take their fair share of the economic downturn now, and they have taken their fair share. While CSEA voted a contract that put in freezes and made workers pay a little more in health benefits, obviously the PEF contract was turned down by state workers.
Right.
But again, this is the trend across the state and across the city, and the cities of our state, and
yep.
I think that that's where we're going, and workers are realizing that they can't be guaranteed a 10% raise every year or a 5% raise every year, and it's a new economic ballgame.
So from those remarks, then it sounds like you think that PEF should have approved that 5-year contract if in fact you believe the realization is necessary that the state just can't continue to provide the kind of benefits that it was providing before. Is that how you feel?
Well, the leadership of PEF agreed with that, obviously, and they agreed to that contract. I never want to see layoffs. I mean, the governor set a target, and it was either going to be achieved through the contract, which the leadership negotiated along the same lines as CSEA, and the membership turned down. If that can be tweaked so as to bring about a positive vote among the membership, then I certainly support that. But the governor has a lot more contracts to negotiate,
yeah.
and he has set the pattern for state workers, and he can't now, when you have the largest state union approving the contract, you can't now go to the next one and say, well, that's okay for them, but we're going to get more.
Yeah, so when the governor says that any tweaks, quote unquote, need to be revenue neutral, do you agree with that?
I would agree that that has to be the case, yes.
Because of what the legislature approved in terms of $450 million worth of workforce savings in the budget?
No, I think it's also the fact that CSEA, received the same basic contract,
right.
the same costs, same savings.
But it looks like, another concern of the PEF members and I think other union members is that there's not a hard promise against layoffs going forward because of ongoing efforts to consolidate various government agencies. Should the governor agree to a no layoff clause?
My understanding was that he did.
I think they think that it's not hard enough, if you will.
Well, I can't mince words. If he said it's there, I will take him at his word and say it's there, and they should take him at his word.
How does it work with the legislature? You approved the CSEA contract because it was struck before you left town in June, right? How does it work now? Because the PEF contract actually was not approved. The agreement, I should say, that was struck between the union leaders and the governor was not approved by the legislature. When does the legislature have to do that? You don't have to come back and do it, or do you have to come back and do it?
Well, first thing, we approved the CSEA contract before it was voted on by the workers.
Right, I recall, sure.
In anticipation of it. Right now, obviously, there's nothing to approve since the contract was voted down. Some would argue legally that in approving the CSEA contract, it wasn't specific to CSEA, and as long as it stays along the same terms, that same approval may apply to the PEF contract as well. If that's not the case, we can certainly do it in January.
So you don't imagine that you would have to come back before the end of the year?
No, as a result of that, no.
But as a result of anything? I know the Senate was grappling with, although the Assembly was not, healthcare exchanges, for example.
Correct. We passed the healthcare exchange that was agreed upon by the parties. Obviously, if there are any changes to it, it's important that it get done. If there are any changes to it, we would have to come back. That's certainly something that would require us to come back. The state is at risk in terms of receiving money from the federal government and complying with the federal law. And we would receive money if the Senate passed the bill that we passed that the governor approved and the Senate actually agreed to before the end of the session. So that's something that's significant and that may require a return of either the Senate or the whole legislature.
But at this point, does not appear that you'd have to return before January.
That is correct. It does not appear. There are a number of issues that are being negotiated, but they can all be done going forward.
What about redistricting? Are you negotiating that too?
It's not a matter of negotiating. I have indicated over and over again that I support a fair, bipartisan redistricting process. I don't think it's necessary for the majority party in each house to have the lead and to have more members of the commission. I would be very happy to have equal representation by both parties, and I think that would be a significant reform in this state.
But that's not independent. The governor wants an independent.
That is bipartisan as opposed to independent.
And you think that that's an appropriate compromise?
I think it's an appropriate reform of the process that doesn't give one political party an advantage over another as a result of being in the majority and controlling the process.
So then by the LAT4 as it's going right now, does that meet your standard?
No, it does not, but that's the existing law and we can't get it changed.
Okay, because Assemblymember McEnany, who of course is sitting on that, has been quite outspoken against the governor, saying the governor's threatened veto of this non-independent process.
Well, I don't think the governor has threatened the process. I think what the governor has threatened was to veto a result that is clearly partisan. That has been his language that I have read. He is not talking about vetoing the process. He's talking about vetoing a political result.
Right. So do you think that that's an appropriate threat for him to make?
I think as the governor, he's entitled to do what he, and to judge things in whatever process he wishes to judge it in. Do I agree with him? I think by and large, reapportionment is a complex issue. Part of it is fixed in our Constitution, certain things that went to favor in the old days when it was fixed, Republicans upstate, like not being able to split towns. These are things that have to be changed constitutionally, and we obviously want to change them constitutionally.
But it seems like it's going to come to a head early, right around the same time that the budget comes to a head. It could be quite difficult, particularly if the Department of Justice rejects your effort to get a waiver, so you don't have to push the primary into the summer. Because if you do have to push the primary into the summer, those lines have to come out in like February.
Yes.
Well, do you envision that that would actually become a fight between the executive branch and the legislative branch?
Well, it will end up obviously in a court, and the court will consider the legislatively approved plan that the governor vetoed, along with a whole host of other plans, and make a determination at what the court thinks is appropriate, have somebody draw their own plan. And once you're in federal court, the federal judges can do anything they want to do.
Is that where you think this is going? You don't see a compromise?
I do see a compromise. I do see a compromise in a bipartisan approach to reapportionment that would be a significant reform in this state. I do see that as a compromise.
And do you see that would include also the loss of 2 House seats? Where would those come from?
Well, that would have to be part of what eventually the commission deals with, and ultimately it has to come from, where the population is or where the population isn't.
Just in closing, because we're almost out of time, what do you envision for the 2012 session? Do you think it'll be difficult?
I would hope that the economy improves. Right now, the predictions on Wall Street are mixed as to whether or not we will or will not be in a recession. Obviously, employment has to increase. I would like to see an increase in education aid in this state. I think school districts are hurting, and our students are suffering as a result in terms of their educational opportunities. And I'd like to see our higher education facilities improve dramatically. We have been taking money from them for a long time, and I think the debate over the reduction in taxes that would go into effect for millionaires on January 1st will be a significant part of the early debate next year.
Will also the gambling expansion potentially play into that as well to generate revenue that in your mind could go for education?
Yeah, but that's a long way down the road.
Right,
would
because
have
it
to be
requires
passed by
constitutional amendments, sure.
Constitutional amendment, 2 successively elected legislatures, and then approved by the people. So it's further down the road.
Didn't the legislature agree, though, to multiple years' worth of education aid reduction? Or multiple years' worth of structure for education aid? Aren't you locked into that in some way?
Well, there's an increase actually for next year.
2%, am I right about that?
No, I think it's a little more, but it's about $800 million statewide.
You'd like it to see more than even that?
I think we'd like to enhance it if we possibly could afford it and do it.
Okay, interesting. Well, Speaker Silver, we look forward to having you back in Albany, the legislature back in Albany. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you more then. In the meantime, thanks very much for being with us.
Pleasure being with you.